In the last year, I have hosted 5 cohorts of my virtual facilitator training that looks like this, which is a training for facilitators, trainers, and people who run course-based courses to teach them the facilitation skills to create what I call magical human moments where participants forget that they're looking at a screen when they're meeting on Zoom. And there's one thing that I did after every single session that I held. And in addition to the 5 cohorts, I also did this for a bunch of organizations. So in Notion, which is where I love to organize all of my thoughts, I do what I call self-feedback, where at the end of every session, I go in and I do a little assessment of how things went. Let's just open up a random one from the last cohort here. I will check how was my energy, how engaged were the participants. Here I made some notes. I felt very drained at the end, maybe because it was getting dark so early, because this was in November. I wrote down what went well, what I want to keep, what can be improved, what can be tightened up, what needs more time, all of the new ideas I want to try. And I do this for every single session. So after having hosted actually in total 6 cohorts, plus I think 5 or so for organizations, I've learned a lot of lessons. And today I actually want to take all of these lessons and put them in this video and share the top 5 things I have learned in running these cohort-based courses. So here's the 5 tips. So before I get started with the first one, if you're watching this live, please like the video. Let me know in the comments that you're here. If you're watching the replay, let me know a comment that you're watching this. If you're not yet subscribed, make sure you subscribe to my channel, because I am planning a little series about cohort-based courses and the things I've been learning. This is going to be about the lessons. The next one will be about my biggest failures and my biggest mistakes. So stay tuned for that. But for today, let's jump in. My first lesson that I've learned is about experiential learning. And what I mean by that is that less slides, less me teaching and talking to my students, and more breakouts, more experiencing. Some of the things that really make cohort-based courses so great is that you have a live audience, that you can make this interactive. It's a two-way communication. It's not just you delivering content. So how can we make really use of that? And breakout rooms is a great example. Having participants connect with each other in breakout rooms is so good in terms of the learning, getting them to come back in the main group and share their takeaways really helps learn from different perspectives, because suddenly it's not just me who's the teacher, but everybody becomes a teacher. There's so much knowledge and wisdom often in my cohorts that I really want that that cross-sharing to happen. And there's one quote that I found that I actually love, and I couldn't find the person who said it. I think I heard it on a podcast recently, and it said that learning is not the transfer of information. Learning is the transformation of the student. And I would say that if you really want to create transformations, it has to be interactive, and it has to be in a way customized too. So if a student has a question, being able to answer those. If there's a chance for them to actually apply the knowledge that they're learning, the theory, and take it and create something with it and get feedback on that, that is so much better than just sitting back and listening to somebody talk on their show PowerPoint slides for an hour or two. So one of the things I'm going to apply to my next cohort, which is starting in a few weeks, is making more assignments and actually making a final big assignment mandatory for anybody who's participating. So I really can make sure that students are applying the knowledge that they're learning and they're working towards something at the end. I don't see it as an exam necessarily, because there's no grading for it, but the people who will take action on it, they actually have something tangible at the end that they can say, hey, I've created this in this 5-week cohort. So that's my first lesson. Let's jump into the second one, which is hosting a kickoff and a graduation. So my cohort for the Virtual Facilitator Training is 5 weeks, but actually it's 7 weeks, because in the first week we have a kickoff connection call, which is really there to not teach anything, but to create an experience for all the people that are still strangers to each other. If you remember the last time you had a first day, maybe it was first day of school, maybe first day of a new job. I just moved to Germany from Canada 4 weeks ago, so there have been lots of firsts, joining a tennis team, meeting new people all the time. Those first interactions are always a little bit awkward. So if I can make a session that just talks about this, like how can we make it less awkward and create more connections between people, then the very first session where we get into the content and we start learning is going to be so much more powerful. So in this first kickoff call, I focus on building psychological safety, fostering connections. I really want strangers to become friends. I have my own process around that, my own activities that I share and that I run. And for my cohort, because I'm teaching people facilitation skills, it's also an opportunity to be a participant. So rather than having to reveal, draw back the curtain right away, all the students get to experience what an engaging, transformational, memorable virtual experience looks like as a participant. And then over the next 5 weeks, we'll actually take it and turn it into a framework that they can follow and recreate on their own. But it's so much more powerful once they have experienced it themselves. And then at the end, we do have a graduation. Again, there's not much teaching, but just sharing, like, what are the things that we've learned? What are the things that we're going to apply, that we're excited to try out? Maybe the wins we've already had throughout the cohort. And sometimes those shares get really emotional because we see the growth we've been doing. So if you're running a cohort, I highly recommend start with a kickoff, end with a graduation, and try not to teach much in those sessions. The only thing that I do in there is, especially in the beginning, give a tour of the community platform and answer any questions that people have in terms of what do they need to make the most out of this experience. Talking about community platform, that it's not. I switched to elements. I'll be talking about community platforms very soon, but first I want to talk about gamification. I love to gamify my experiences because we all learn better when we play. Sometimes adding a little competitive aspect can be good, but I've also learned that sometimes it's maybe a little bit too much. So when it comes to gamification, what I did from the very first time is try to figure out, if I give people challenges, assignments, how can I make sure that they're motivated to do it? So the very first cohort, I actually had a little point system where for each challenge that you complete, you get a point. Every week I showed the leaderboard. I created this Canva image with people's thumbnails on who's on top of the leaderboard. But after like week 2 or 3, it was the same people on the leaderboard the whole time. So there were a small handful of people that were really, really competitive, and they're like, I'm gonna do every single challenge. I want to win. I want to be on top of the leaderboard at the end. But then for most other people, they were either, I don't have time to do this additional work to showing up live, or now that I'm so far behind, I don't really even want to start. I feel like I'm not ever going to catch up, so there's no need for me to participate. So I changed that and turned that whole challenge into this, which is the Virtual Facilitator Training Bingo. I created these cards that I actually shipped out to all the participants in the mail. I would have also made it available digitally, but instead of competing against each other, now I asked them to compete against themselves. So for each row that you complete in the bingo, you get entered into a raffle to win a prize. If you complete the whole thing, you get a special prize. And this went through many different iterations. Like with every session, like I do the self-feedback, I'm like, okay, there's different things that need to be changed. Like I cross the things off myself. I realized in the beginning, I was really proud that nobody could get a bingo until week 3. Until I realized, hey, so that means nobody's going to have that feeling of accomplishment until week 3. Why not give them a win before we even start with the first session? So I added things like filling out your profile in the online community, adding a picture to it, sending a message to one of the other students, like simple things just to get them engaged and build momentum that then carries over throughout the different assignments. By the way, if you want more details on this bingo card, I might even do a full video just on that. So make sure you subscribe and let me know, like this video, leave a comment if you want me to do a video on that. Now, community platform, already teased it a bit before. Again, one of the big benefits of cohort-based courses over self-guided or self-paced courses is that you get to meet other people. And those connections don't just happen when one person is at the front of the room sharing their knowledge. They happen in breakout rooms and they happen in between sessions. So I think having a community platform where participants, students can engage with each other is really, really important. This is the place where I host the replays, where I host additional materials, where students post their assignments, give feedback to each other, where they can hold each other accountable. So there's lots of different places that you can check out. The one that I am currently using is this one here. It's called Mighty Networks, and this is actually where I have hosted my larger community is hosted, my Deep Connectors community. So anybody who's ever taken a workshop or training with me is in here, and within it, there's different experiences. So each cohort has their own kind of course, their own private section in here, and this is, like I said, where I host the course material. I actually have people download the bingo card. Some of the assignments here are actually the same as on the bingo card. So now participants can also fill that out virtually and just check things off as they're going through it. This is where I have additional information, bonus content. Like this is where I host everything. And then it also comes with a activity feed where participants can post things like Scott, whose cat showed up every single time we were on a session. So at the end of the facilitator training, I'm like, well, I mean, your cat receives, qualifies for a certificate too. So I gave his cat Mia a certificate too. There's questions from participants. They're uploading their assignments. They're really engaging with each other. So this is one of the places that I'm using. But there are some other ones that are great for hosting a community or hosting a cohort, like check out circle.so, or the one that I'm really excited about to use for my next cohort is called Disco. And I can see that somebody from Disco is actually watching this as well. So hello. They're a newer platform that I'm very excited to try out for the second time. They've done a lot of improvements in the last little bit, and I can't wait to share more about how I'm liking the platform, how it's different to Mighty Networks, and what I will choose for cohort number 8, right? Like I'm doing cohort number 7 in March, and then 8 will be the next one. So let me know if you're using any other platforms that I should check out. All right, we're coming to the 5th lesson, the 5th thing that I've learned, which is office hours. So I actually learned this from a program that I took called Community Design that is run by Mighty Networks on how to create a membership site. And one thing that they did that I just loved was they did their trainings every Tuesday. And because it was a lot of people there, it wasn't as interactive. It was not on Zoom. There were no breakout rooms. I didn't like that so much. So they were doing more one-directional sharing, and then took questions from the chat at the Q&A at the end. But the Thursday was a session on Zoom where you got to join with your camera. You got to meet some of the other students. You got to ask your questions. And every single time, the people were different. The questions were different. What we talked about was different. And I felt I learned even more from attending these office hours. So I've applied this to my own cohort. Now we do have a training on one day and the office hours on the other day. And as a host, as a facilitator, as a course creator, I love these because number one, I don't really need to prepare for those. I just need to make sure that if there's no questions, I still have some content that I can share or some activities to do in the breakout rooms. But mostly it's just showing up, seeing what questions are in the room, and then in getting answering them or getting the group involved in figuring out their own answer and doing a little bit of coaching. And it's so valuable for participants because we can go deeper on the content, and it is a little bit of a time commitment, an additional time commitment, but everybody that has showed up for the office hours, that was one of the best parts, because often the groups are smaller. Again, you get to know some of the other participants if it's the same small group that shows up every time. And the one big lesson I've learned there was if I'm hosting, let's say, my training on a Tuesday, I can't host office hours on a Wednesday. I've actually tried that in the last cohort, but number one, anybody who misses the live cohort and is like watching the replay, catching up with things, won't have enough time to formulate questions. So having a day in between was actually much better. So with my next cohort, again, I'm doing trainings on Tuesdays and office hours will be on Thursdays. So yes, I'm really, really excited about this next cohort because I've taken a little bit of a break after moving from Canada to Germany in the last 2 months and been improving a lot of things. So just creating this video and thinking about what are the lessons I've learned has been really exciting because I have a lot of things I want to improve, but also I learned what really is my superpower. And my superpower really is the thing that I'm teaching, which is the facilitation skills. It's creating a brave space where strangers can come together. They can be vulnerable with each other quickly. We can go deep quickly without making it feel awkward or uncomfortable. And therefore, it builds a lot of momentum into the cohort and the learning because we're actually building a whole community. And sometimes after the first session, people feel like they are best friends already. And I think that's the thing that I also want to teach to more course creators like you, if you're watching this. So if you are interested in joining the next virtual facilitator training, I'll post a link below, but there are dates coming up. If you're watching this today is February 16, 2022. The next cohort is starting in a little bit over a month. So make sure to check that out. And there are some early bird details on the page. And let me know what has resonated from this video with you. Like I said, my plan is to create maybe an additional one with my biggest mistakes that I've made, maybe something more specific. If you have any questions, any ideas, post them below. And hopefully, see you soon. Bye.